Live streaming is on.
Hello, everybody. How are you? It's Friday, one Friday. With all these things, difficult to know which Friday it is. Yes.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Shut up,
It's,
YouTube. Yes, as you can see, it's connected because you started talking. Fucker. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Hello. We're here with Saint Patron of Illustrators, the man who changed the world, the man who is going to become the next Pope, or not. My dear friend, Dave McKEAN. How are you, Dave?
I'm fine. I hope I wasn't responsible for this world. It's not a very good one at the moment. I'll send it back to the makers, I think.
Oh, shit. I haven't thought about it. I can't talk to you anymore.
Thank you.
Get away. Stay away from me. Anyway, how are you? How's the family? How's everything in your neck of the woods?
Everything's fine. I mean, I live in the middle of nowhere, so things are basically the same. My kids have left home. They're not kids anymore. So I'm here living with my wife, and it's been in between reading the paper at the beginning of the day over coffee and checking in with the world at the end of the day on the television news. In the middle, it's been great and very little different, honestly, from my usual life. I've been working on what I expected to work on. Walking in the morning as usual, bird watching and my usual stuff. I think the only thing I've really missed is playing live music. I play in a band, and we haven't obviously been able to play. I've been playing stuff on the net and putting little films up, but it's not the same as really playing with people. So that's the one thing I really do genuinely interact with other people on, and
that was going to be my next question. Exactly.
Oh, sorry.
No. That's perfect because that connects without me having to even ask. So that's the one thing you miss the most. But do you miss anything else? Like going to the movies, meet up with friends in a pub to have a pint or something.
Well, I used to go twice a week to see friends in the pub, and we've been doing Zoom virtual pub meetings, pouring our wine online. It's not the same. But we have at least been able to, maintain that contact. That's been good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really go to the cinema anymore. I can't stand people talking through films. So I usually just buy films and watch them here. So every night I finish work and then go and watch a film.
And what's the last one you've watched?
Actually, last night I watched Saving Private Ryan last night.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching while I'm working. I either listen to music or watch or have stuff playing in the background, and I've been listening to World at War, which is this amazing seminal television series about the Second World War, and so I thought I'd watch Saving Private Ryan. I haven't seen it for years, and it is as powerful as I remember. The music bothered me this time. I don't remember that before. I thought the music was really manipulative and and unnecessary. Actually,
that's one of the things I hate about that movie. I don't like like with Schindler's List. I have the same problem with Spielberg. The epilogues that are like, I don't need this. But the music, the bombastic, manipulative music on that one, on Private Ryan, I remember the first time it didn't click. But you said, the next times I watch it, it just bothered me. Like, this is not the right,
it didn't seem like the right music at all this time. I don't remember thinking that before when I saw it. I saw it in a cinema in America the first time, and I stayed watching all the way through the credits at the end. Like a lot of people, I think, sort of shell shocked by it.
Absolutely.
And certainly there were a couple of older men at the front of the cinema who were still sitting by the time the lights went up, and they were clearly really shaken by it. I thought it was astounding. I could smell the cordite as during that film. So I watched it again last night, and it's still an amazing achievement. The music bothered me, and I don't remember thinking so badly about Schindler's List because the theme, the Schindler's List theme, is so beautiful. But maybe if I watched that again, maybe I would have a bad time with the music there.
No. With I meant that. I meant that with both films, I have a problem with the epilogue. You know, the
epilogue.
The epilogue,
Yeah.
the feel good endings, the Spielberg feel good endings. You know what I mean? They seem out of place to me. Not about the music.
Yes. Well, I think he has to make films that are about success and that are about heroic success. He's just driven to make those films. It's a noble thing to try and make, I think. It's a very hopeful view of the world. But I think just occasionally it means he adds music and sort of forces you to try and think that way when really you don't need to.
Yes.
You don't need to.
I agree. It happens to him too much. You know, I remember still when I watched Minority Report.
All right.
All the movies telling you it's going to end badly. It cannot have a happy ending. This is a Philip K. Dick.
Yes.
It has to. And suddenly he changes his mind and says, it's going to have a happy ending. And you're like,
Yeah.
you just destroyed the whole movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, he's obviously not comfortable with allowing people to leave the cinema in an uncomfortable place and come to those conclusions for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think other filmmakers are happier to do that, and they tend to be the filmmakers that I'm sort of more in love with these days.
Yeah, you know, it's like watching Paths of Glory. You know,
Yes, indeed. Yes, I mean Kubrick. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it cannot be a happy ending. They cannot be a happy ending, and there is not a happy ending.
No.
It's war.
It's an open-ended ending that allows the viewer to take that information away and think for themselves about it.
Mm-hmm.
Kubrick is a complicated man.
Yeah, we were discussing it yesterday with Gera and the other day with Yannick Kubrick, and I always say the same thing about him. You know, when I like one of his movies, I love it. I just point blank love it. But when I don't like one of the movies, I just don't like it. There's no middle. No, I don't have any middle ground except, and this is going to be funny, with Full Metal Jacket.
Oh, right.
I consider that one 2 movies.
Yeah, it has a real halfway split.
And the first half I love, but the second half, I remember it was the same year as Platoon, and I was thinking, this is the right war movie, and this is one by a guy who doesn't understand it in a way. You know what I mean? Too cold for what it was.
Maybe.
What do you think?
I haven't seen that one for a long time, actually.
Yeah.
I generally.
Go, please.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say I really like all of Kubrick's films. I always feel like he's one of the people who's ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'm going to come back to it in 5 years' time, and it'll open up and show me even more. And that he's always several steps ahead of me, and he always has more interesting interpretations and things to show me. Whereas some filmmakers, you see them maybe at the time in your life when they mean the most. Maybe you see them in your 20s or something like that, and you watch them again in your 40s,
mm-hmm.
and they've really lost relevance to you. They're trivial and they're silly, and you love them then, but you've really outgrown them.
Mm-hmm.
But Kubrick, I still feel, is always ahead of me, and I'm 50 odd now, and he's still ahead of me.
But with Kubrick, you think it's like that kind of director where you can always find, and at least I've had it with him with the movies I like, that you always find new layers when you watch it again.
That's what I mean, really. Yes, it's a very full, rich, souffle of a piece of work that does not give you everything in one hit. There are some filmmakers who just give you everything the first time, and often you come out of those films feeling that they're great. It's a really full-on, hour and a half you've just had. But you go back and watch it again, and you really got everything the first time. There's nothing else going on.
Yeah.
And I can think of a few that I've seen like that.
Yeah. You can mention them, no problem. I
don't want to,
I can say a lot of those, especially in the last 10, 15 years, which are amazing for first view. And then you rent it or buy them to get them at home. And I can never watch them a second time. Literally, because it's like nothing else.
Yes, yeah. it's become a bit of a sort of post MTV trick. I think they're so full of tricks and turns, and they really just give you everything. And it's a trick to be able to do that, but it's not what I love in a great film. I like the films that I like have stayed with me for decades, and I look forward to seeing them again in the decades to come. I know that they will continue to offer new meanings to me.
What aside of Kubrick, is there any film or school of films that you think has influenced you as an artist? I'm a school of film. I can talk about German expressionism, or or pulp or noir.
There've just been so many. I really like kind of everything. I like bits of everything. So I really love very, very old films. I love films at the birth of cinema, where you can see the rules being created, and some of it works and some of it doesn't. And when you're aware of the grammar being written, I think that's really powerful. And some extraordinary films were made in the silent era that have come up with images and ideas that I've never seen bettered.
Mm-hmm.
I love that period, that expressionist period, the birth of modernism, the birth of all the things I love. The birth of comics, the birth of jazz, the birth of modern orchestral music, the birth of it was an extraordinary time, and the birth of cinema was really powerful. Yeah. And then I like films with great dialogue, so I like a lot of those films in the 30s that were written by extraordinary playwrights and directors that really, really loved dialogue and really understood dialogue. I like a lot of the experimental stuff in the 50s when that new wave of European directors were starting to take film for themselves and create a language of film for themselves. Mm-hmm. I like a lot of the experiments that came out in the 60s when the rule book was torn up, when when the studio system was failing, and a new generation of writers and directors came in and said, "Don't worry, we know how to make films. Just give us some money, and we'll make some great films for you." And they did. I like a lot of films that are being made now. I think the digital revolution is extraordinary and an incredibly powerful new box of tools. I don't necessarily like it when it's simply trying to make hyper-real dinosaurs, but I like it when it's used as a storytelling device to allow you to show what people are thinking, and and a universe of the imagination, and it's an incredibly powerful. It's almost another silent era. It's creating a new grammar for film now, and at its best, some amazing films are being made now. So I'm happy watching a bit of everything. Really.
Yeah, I was.
Sorry. No, I was just about to say. The film that I watched the day before yesterday. In fact, I watched it in 3 nights. Was Angels in America, which was Tony Kushner's play adapted into a series, so a 6-part series, I think. HBO, absolutely. Just a work of genius, amazing piece of work. And I remember watching, I think I just caught 1 or 2 episodes when it was first broadcast and thought, that looks great, I must buy it. And I bought it and never quite got around to watching it, so I thought I'd watch it. Amazing piece of work.
Yeah. Just
a piece of writing that you just never see. You don't see writing like that every day. It's great.
That's true. Are you the one of those who think, and in a way I do, that the better movies are being made on TV now?
Well, I can certainly see that television has always been a writer's medium, and I can see that the problem in America, in films generally, has been the writing recently. Mm-hmm. It's not in the scale of the image making and all that sort of stuff. And there's some great actors around, and that's always great. But the writing has been hampered in several different directions for different reasons. Whereas in television, obviously it's a writer's medium. And so there are some great scripts there, and there's some wonderful work being done. I still love films, unfortunately. So I still love being able to tell a film in 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And and that's that. And then I can take it away and live with it, rather than the open-ended storytelling. I can see why people love it, but I just love abdicating my life for 2 hours to a great storyteller to tell a beginning and a middle and an end, and actually do that, and then I take it away and live with it for a while. So I still love films, really.
Yeah, I was meaning more like the new TV miniseries format than, you know, open-ended, because that's where a lot of filmmakers, you know, are really good filmmakers and are going to television to tell also short stories.
Yeah.
So that's what I meant, you know, about movies they cannot make because of being under control of a producer. That's what some of them have told me, by the way. When I go to TV with my name and my reputation, I control the product, and I know nobody's going to hamper my vision. So that's what I meant. Angels in America is a perfect example. You know, it's something that the director and the writer just literally said, I can only do this on HBO. I could never do I would never have been allowed to do this as a movie.
Yeah, I think it's a real shame. I think you know, the film industry is really missing. It seems to be missing the mid-range films. There's all the money's being put into vastly bloated, very, very expensive films that really can't afford to take any chances because they're just so expensive. And then there's a lot of individuals making very, 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 very low budget films because the equipment is so much cheaper now, and the ability to make film is so much easier. But they're really, really low budget. Whereas, you know, if you look at the films that have written the history of American films, for example, and British films and a lot of European films, it's mostly those mid-range films where they've got a bit of money to be able to really, you know, do something interesting and get the best people involved. But it hasn't cost so much that the panic sets in that this has to appeal to everybody. It can still be a niche film that finds its own life, but if it's a really good film, it'll last forever. Yeah,
I think that mostly in Europe you can see what you just mentioned, you know, La Nouvelle Vague or the Spanish Revolution after Franco died with Almodovar and all the others, Italian movies, you know, mid-range movies.
Those mid-range films
that change the culture in each of those countries.
Yeah, absolutely. And England never really has had a film industry like other countries, but it's always been making films. And there have always been some wonderful filmmakers who have had great runs. Nicholas Roeg had a great run of films. Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger had a great run of films. But they're all, you know, mid-range films. They're supported by, production companies or government bodies or whatever. There is a fund there, but they're small. They're relatively small budget films, but they defined our culture, and those seem to be missing now.
Yeah, I have at home a lot of, you know, Ealing films or Hammer films.
Oh, yeah.
So believe me, I love British movies. Let me say hello to people so they don't think we ignore them, by the way. Quickly. Hello, Paula. Hello, Felipe Brel. Hello, Enrique Ranz. Hello, Berenjena Atómica, which is the atomic aubergine, just so you know. Nakoma Nix. Hello, Angel. Hello, Adrian. La Berenjena Atómica asks, can Dave about how he met Neil Gaiman and Grant Morrison? And how was it working with them? So let me ask him the first question, but not the second one, because the second one he's answered a million times. So how was it to meet them?
Wow, I've never had to answer that question before. Well, I'm
selecting one of both.
I met Neil in London. I was still in art school. Neil was working as a journalist. There was a magazine called Borderline that was just starting going. It was an anthology, and we'd have monthly meetings in London. There's a bunch of people involved in it, including Mark Buckingham and Disraeli. Lots of people who went on to be professional comics writers and illustrators. Neil was one of them. He was writing 2 or 3 stories, I forget, and I was writing and drawing 2 stories.
Mm-hmm.
And we just used to get together every month and show each other's work. You know, we'd show what we were doing, and it was really great, very encouraging. We sort of challenge each other and enthuse each other. And then Neil had a story that he'd written called Violent Cases that he wrote in a writer's workshop and gave it to me to see if I fancied turning it into a illustrated book. And so we just started work from there, really. And then Borderline as a magazine collapsed for various reasons, too boring to go into now. And but we didn't really mind because we were working on this book, Violent Cases. And then we finished that, and then Neil arranged an interview with DC Comics editors in London that I still to this day don't know whether they were actually expecting us or whether it was just another of Neil's blags getting his foot in the door. And so we turned up, and I showed the work that I've been doing for Violent Cases and some other work that I've been doing in art school. And we walked away with a commission. So it was, at the time, it was really easy because the year before, DC Comics had come over to London and found Alan Moore and Brian Bolland and Dave Gibbons and that little group. And so they'd just come back for more. And so the door was open. Alan Moore basically opened the door, and the rest of us were very happy to wander in. And Grant Morrison I met really because after I'd finished the first thing with Neil, Karen Berger sent me a script. And so and Grant was in London, so I met up with Grant and we had lunch and we talked about the script and whether we could do it. Mm-hmm. And I had a few ideas to play around with it, and he was in the mood at the time in his writing career that he wanted to try something new as well. So we kept some of the things in the script and ditched a lot of the other stuff in the script and did something else.
Mm-hmm. So then,
it was very nice working with both of them.
That's what we need. Paula Ventimiglia is raving because he says he has an astrolabe and a Viking helmet in his studio. Wow. Enrique Rand says,
I do. I have.
Go.
Yes. No, it's my editing helmet. Every time I'm editing a film, I put on it's like a biker's helmet with horns. I don't really. I pretend that
you're just saying so nobody can get near you while you're working. Like
that's right.
It's actually a bull helmet, so you know it's not Viking.
Bull helmet. Okay.
Enrique Rand says, Dave, I adore your covers that you did for DC. Your style so personal and dreamy is such an inspiration. Carolina Benz says, okay, she is going for the curse part. I fucking love your work.
That's nice. Fair enough. You can do the cursing. I don't need.
Yes, that's leave it up to us. We're the Spaniards, you know, white people. Can you? Okay, and a different thing. Aside of all the comics part, you've done a lot of work as a movie director. Do you consider that complementary? I mean, not as a different muscle for you. You consider them all, you know, like comics, illustration, movies, as part of the same whole for you, or you separate them as different arts and different crafts? In one respect, they're exactly the same. I think I'm basically finding a subject or finding a story that I'm really fascinated by, and it makes me. It's really engaging, and it makes me angry, or it makes me cry, or it makes me laugh, or something about it, something about the subject that I just can't turn away. I can't put down. So it's a story that I really want to tell. And if it needs to be a film, you know, if it comes with music and sound and well, it's probably going to be a film. Then that's the medium that I'm using to tell it with, and so I'm just using that
tool to tell that story, which is no different from using the tools of a graphic novel to tell that story, or music to tell that story, or theatre to tell that story. They're all essentially the same. It's problem solving, and it's trying to communicate the ideas and the emotions and the atmosphere as accurately and as powerfully as I can. So in that respect, it's the same. Technically, there are differences, and film, generally, you are working with other people, so it's a collaboration. So that's very different from, for example, what I'm doing now, which is I'm completely on my own, making a new book. I have complete control over it, and every line, dot and dash and word and thought of it, it's just me, and I'm controlling it. So that is quite different. But what I've learned is, if you roll with the collaboration and don't try and fight it and control everything, you get the best out of collaboration, and you get something that none of you could have done on your own. You get something that's much better than the sum of its parts.
And then the second question connected to that one is, when
Yeah.
one of those concepts, ideas, whatever you're going to call it, comes first to your mind, it comes as, this is going to be a movie, or this is going to be an illustration, or has to be a graphic novel or comic, whatever you're going to call it, or it's, developing in your head, and then it's like, okay, no, this needs to be this needs to be that.
No, it usually just comes as an idea, that a sort of central idea that different things glom onto, and it's sometimes and they've changed. Some things have changed as they've developed. It started as one thing, and it's been really obvious to me that this really should be a film, because but then as I've developed it, actually it doesn't need to be that. It can be something else. Or what's really interesting is when it can be expressed in different ways. So I did a book called Black Dog, The Dreams of Paul Nash, which is, it's both a book, it's definitely a book, and the graphic novel is the sort of primary thing. But as I was writing it, the words became songs, and so the whole piece became a live theatrical piece as well, and could be other things as well. And what you find is the subject matter is at the center, and you can look at it from different ways through different media. So a graphic novel will look at that story, that idea, in one way, using the strengths of what a comic can do. But music adds a different dimension to it. You can start to look at it and understand it in a different way. Music is very direct and emotional. It just goes straight in. It's not so intellectual. Whereas the book is more of an intellectual elaboration of the idea. Music is a real emotional thing. So it's a very different way of looking at it. And so that's been interesting. I've been working on a project called The Wolf's Child. So that started as a play. I wrote it as a play, and we performed it with a theatrical company in the woods, with an audience coming every night for 40 nights. And the piece is about two things. It's about the animal nature inside all of us, and it's about the relationship, the very particular relationship between mothers and daughters. Those are the two things it's about. And so the play allowed us to look at those ideas through the lens of the play, playing with the audience, their expectations of the audience, and what a play can do. But I've also been making drawings and paintings and photographs along the same theme, and that's a much more private thing, because that's just me and a drawing making those images. So that becomes much more just the way I personally see that sort of stuff. I'm not dealing with an audience. And then I'm also making it as a film, so then that brings in music and the things that a film can do. So that's what I've been really interested in, finding a subject that's really, really powerful, really big, and can warrant all this time and effort spent on it, and then just analysing it, looking at it from different points of view, and being able to do that and try different things, different media.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to go, you know, because it's been looking to me in the last few years with your work that there was a constant search. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course, and I probably am, of cross those limits. I mean, between the language of a comic, the language of a play, the language of a movie, to say in a way, where you can just explore each part of the project from a different perspective, where it takes you to this part of it, this muscle of my brain, or my instinct, or my emotion of my gut, or my guts, tells me I can play with this as a movie, but I can play with this as music, and also I can play with this as a comic. So all those limits that really don't exist, because I think that as creators, we create them ourselves because we've been taught to create them, etc., etc. They don't really exist. They are limits we are self-imposed. So you've been, I don't know if consciously or not, have you been trying to cross those limits and just saying, I think I can go in any direction, I just need to find a reason in a way to make it work as a different piece of art?
Yes, I think I've always been quite short of attention, and I like hopping around between different things. I think I tend to get stale quite quickly. I get into a rhythm of doing something, and it's fine, and I can get some work done, but it doesn't take long before I'm starting to get lazy and starting to repeat myself. And it's really refreshing to just go and do something else for a while, and then when I come back to it, the batteries are regenerated, and I can see it with fresh eyes, and the energy's back. Also, they talk to each other. So the lessons I learn editing film, for example, or working with actors, inform the drawings I do for a comic. I know they seem to be quite different, but actually they do speak to each other. The lessons that I've learned working with actors, I can hear those lessons every day as I'm drawing the panels in the book that I'm doing at the moment. Actors, as far as my experience goes, which is not very much, but the experience that I've had with actors is they don't like to be puppets. They don't like to be dragged around the set and told what to do. They like to be engaged in it. They like to find their own way into a scene. They like to show up at the set, and we talk through how they feel about it and where would they start, and are they standing or sitting? Are they distracted? How would they start the scene? All of these things are sort of implied in the script, but they're up for debate when you're actually there every day, problem solving, shooting the film. And I thought that on my first film because I felt I needed to be in control. I was supposed to be the director. I had the business card that said I was the director, and I thought everybody would want to know what to do. So I felt I needed to be able to tell them. Whereas on the second film I realized I just needed to relax and let the actors, bring their own experiences and their own skills and intuition to the piece. And I think I got much happier actors out of that experience. I think I got a better film, and I think I got much more natural scenes out of it. And so, even though I'm not actually talking to actors directly, making these scenes in this comic that I'm doing, I kind of talking to the characters before we start and trying to imagine other ways in which they could start the scene and how they would relate to each other. And that's really just from the experience of dealing with actors, that there are these other ways of approaching the scene every day. Start, that conversation again.
And do the characters talk back to you?
Yeah, they bloody do. And they often, they often don't do what I expect them to do.
That's what I was going to add.
All of that.
Go, please.
All of that is. Yeah, no, all of that is great fun and part of the fun of exploring the work and keeping it fresh. At the end of the day, I think that's what it's all about: is keeping it alive, keeping yourself available to those new ideas and forces and changes and voices all the time, and that's what keeps it interesting for me.
If you see that I stop talking for a second or two, it's because you freeze on the screen many times. So I in some cases I don't know where you have ended speaking. So
all right, I'm sorry. Yeah, my internet
is what it is. It's what it is. Bear with me for a while. If you see I am like these for 2 seconds is just that I have to wait to make sure you have finished your phrase. Okay. No, but what I was going to say is go.
I was just about to say that my internet connection here is terrible, so that's why.
That's life. We can do, as I said before we started, it's not our fault. We can do whatever we do, but internet is what it is. So what I was going to say is that some writers, of course, have told me that when they're writing a novel, they learn to stop trying to force characters to do something that they don't want to do. Meaning is, this character, I want him to do that, but the character is pushing back, saying, "This is not who I am. This is not what I would never do that." So you have to listen to your own characters. And one of them was telling me, "You're going to think I'm crazy," and I'm like, "No, I don't. I think it's part of the creation. It's exactly that you have to learn to stop and listen to them, because they know much better than you do what they should do or not."
It does sound slightly crazy, and I do worry that people think that it's some sort of magic supernatural thing that's going on. It really isn't. I think all that's going on is you're aware that there's a problem. There's a problem. There's something wrong, and that's a way of saying the characters are telling me that they need to do something else. It's actually you telling yourself that that's just jarring. It's not right. That is not right, and I've got to find another way around that, and I've got to find another way to make that work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but in a way, it sounds a lot more romantic if you say the character is talking back at you.
It does sound romantic, but I'm very allergic to those sort of it's all magic, and the muse comes down, and it's all the supernatural spirit and all. I'm very much against all of that.
Yeah, as the joke goes in comics, only Alan Moore can talk about magic and and survive it.
Only just.
Yes. Philippe Abrel asks, what does Dave think of Peter Greenaway's films? It's a very visual filmmaker, but sometimes people have said he's all style over substance.
Well, I absolutely loved Peter Greenaway's films when I was in art school. The first one I saw was Z and Two Noughts, and then I went back to Draftsman's Contract and watched every one after that. I think my favourite was Drowning by Numbers, which I still think is a great film. He's a very different kind of filmmaker. Not every film has to be emotionally wrought and about love, and he's a very different kind of person. He's an intellectual. He has a different attitude to filmmaking. He's diagrammatic, he's schematic, and if every film was like that, you'd get bored of it very quickly. But the fact is, almost nobody makes films like that. He's a really unique filmmaker.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that he's there making films like that. It's an extraordinary body of work, and he also has bled out into theatre and art gallery work and everything else. So I love that sort of holistic view.
Yeah. When
you have a creator who can sort of assert his worldview on any medium, and he really can. He's a real artist who's chosen film as his medium. There are only a few filmmakers, I think, who are like that. I think Buñuel is like that. I think he's a great artist who chose film as his medium. But I think Greenaway is extraordinary. It doesn't bother me that they're not as emotionally manipulative as the usual kind of movie.
Yeah,
he's unique.
Yeah, with me, those guys in the audience use this against me because I always mention Peter Greenaway, and I always mention John Ford. So they always ask something so I can have John Ford and Greenaway, and then tell me. I always talk about them. Yes, I do. I love them both. I love Greenaway.
But
it was
completely
quite an
different.
experience when I saw first watch The Belly of an Architect, and then Running by Numbers because I didn't go in the right order, and I was just blown away.
Yeah.
That moment, say you
Yeah.
can do films like this.
Yeah.
So it was amazing. And with John Ford, what I see, you made me do it, guys. You were mentioning the silent film, and everybody goes to the Searchers or the Stagecoach, and I always tell them the same. To develop that language that he created that looks so simple, which is not so easy to follow, etc. Go back, go to his silent films.
Yeah.
See what
Yeah,
he
definitely.
and how he created that language. The language didn't in the Stagecoach and later didn't come from thin air. He created the language when that language wasn't there.
Yeah.
Anyway, let me see the others. Felipe Gonzalez asks, do you see yourself as a comic artist who found his artistic path in that medium, or you are an artist who wanted to experiment with all possibilities of comics as a vehicle to tell stories?
I try and avoid any definitions really. I'm very happy to be a comic book artist or comic book illustrator. Comics were my first love. I keep the faith. They're still my first love. I'm doing comics now, and I hope I'll draw comics when I snuff it. But I like all these other things as well. And as you said, really, these demarcations between jobs and professions really are an illusion. I think they're a great failing of the education system. I don't think we should be taught that way, to live in these little pigeonholes.
Yeah.
I think what there is there's a world of ideas, and we can express them in all of these different ways. I think comics make good use of what I can do, but when I'm doing comics a lot, I miss sound and I miss music, so I really love to do these other things. I don't think of myself as an artist. I just wanted to get that one in. I don't like using the word artist because I don't really know what that word means anymore, because I think it's just been reduced and denuded and relativized out of all meaning. So I prefer words that are descriptive. I am a painter and drawer, do comics, and I write, and I play music and compose and I design and do those things, and they're all just descriptions of these different jobs, and that's fine by me.
Yeah,
I very much. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say that I completely agree with you. That's education system that creates small boxes, for everything instead of made them a whole. Like
yes,
math is going to get you to art, but art and math cannot be together. Like, no, I'm sorry, math is going to take you to art, and art is going to take you to math. There's math in every painting. There's math in every art. In every there's a way always. What I mean is science always moves to art, and art always moves to science. So when I see them put in separate boxes, they're like, no. There's got to be a mix. It's always got to be a mix.
Yes, and they really need each other, I think.
Absolutely.
I don't teach very much, but I do lectures in art schools, and I almost always just get a room full of illustration teachers, students to talk to, and it's often on a university campus, and out there, there are scientists and historians and geographers and every other facet of human endeavor. Go and talk to them. Let's get some cross-pollination going on here.
Absolutely.
Don't just talk to somebody else who's in the same little box as you. This is a real failing of the education system that it teaches this way. I much prefer when you have a topic, a subject to explore, and you explore it through its art and through its history and through its geography and through its relationship to science and theology and all of these things, and you get a really fully rounded understanding of a particular subject.
Yeah.
Not just through one little eye hole.
Yeah, I always put it in give the same metaphor. I think as it's like when a doctor tells you the solution to a symptom, but never gives you the solution to the cause. But I see the same thing with the educational system, where it's like, okay, guys, I need the context. I don't just give me the information, not the context. The context, as you said, is history, is math. It can be physics. It can be a painting. It's like people looking at Guernica, Picasso's Guernica, and say, "Wow, that's scary."
Yes.
And you're like, "Fucking go out and see why he did it. Look at the history of how the Germans bombed it as a test for World War II. How they tasted in that town because Franco told them to test it. And how Picasso was literally trying to do the most horrific thing because that was horror for him. So that's what I mean, that the system should put together all that, because without the context of history, Guernica is just amazing, of course, but the meaning of that painting is not at all what it should be.
Yes, no, it's so much reduced. I mean, something like Guernica just opens up into every aspect of human life. So it's a wonderful key to open a whole conversation about so many things. That's how things should be taught, I think.
Yeah.
But what do I know?
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking to Yannick Paquet the other day about people doesn't know that he's a biologist, an entomologist. And he was telling me how he didn't realize until a couple of years ago how that experience in science had influenced the way he works his pages, and how the shape of his panels and how he composes the pages is informed by the science that he learned. He never was just like, okay, I use this little thing to determine every single panel where there's an Amazon. It's got to have this shape. It's got to have this in the back. These other characters have to have this. So it's like, I never did realize how the calculations went on my head to make everything fit. And he was like, people keep thinking that's Grant's idea. It's not. Because they think, oh, Grant has everything in his head. It's not. I just did it by instinct. And until very few months ago, I didn't realize I was doing it because that's how I have been taught to think as a scientist. So I was like, okay, this is amazing because it's a perfect blend of art and science, which is how it should work.
Yep.
Anyway,
I agree.
So you're frozen, so I'm sorry, I take a couple seconds to talk. Okay, Paula Ventimiglia asks, I would love to know which other artists, painters, comic drawers, whatever you want to call it, you admire and feel inspired in your work these days. Who inspires? Instead of asking you who inspires
how long have we got?
to become or to have whatever you need. if you want me to cut it a bit, instead of asking about which artist influenced you and made you become a comic artist or blah blah blah, we can go to who influences your work now.
I mean, there are just so many. There were so many when I started, and then going to art school, I just got bombarded from all directions with new things, new people, new influences, new things to try. And then I started working. I found more and more people. Some of them go in very deeply. Some of them sit on the surface for a while, and then it mulches down into what I do. Some of them I sort of fall in love with and then fall out of love with them just as quickly. Some of them hang around. I mean, much as we were talking about Kubrick and Buñuel and people like that, they hang around in my life for the whole of my life. And I keep coming back to them, and they tell me new things. I could pick a few. How about that? So when I was a kid, I loved comic books. So I loved all the comic books that I found. I liked, Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and Warren magazines, and I liked Bernie Wrightson, and I liked all that stuff. And I liked American science fiction illustration, from those magazines like Amazing, all that kind of stuff, astounding stories. And then my dad drew, but not professionally. But he was at least interested in art, and so we would go to museums occasionally. And I found it was the surrealists that I really liked.
Mhm.
So it was people like Max Ernst I really liked. And then I liked. I got into music, and I liked a lot of the album covers that were on the albums that I was buying, and a lot of those were very surreal, or they were illustrated, and I liked all that sort of stuff. And then I went to art school and found a lot of painters and people there that I liked, especially expressionists, I think. This idea that a drawing was about not just how somebody looked, but how they felt. It got under the skin and showed you something about how their mind was working and how they were feeling. And I found that was best expressed with a few people. Francis Bacon, great British painter, was one. Jim Dine, an American artist, was another. And then a British illustrator called Ralph Steadman, who's an absolutely extraordinary illustrator and artist. I really loved his work, and he was my gateway, really. He was the one that made me understand the power of drawing. Every line in a Ralph Steadman drawing expresses the anger in that face, or the dogness of the dog that he's drawing. You know, every line is working. So that was a big lesson learned. And it's just gone on, really. When I was starting out in my last year or two of art school, and then first year or two working professionally, I was looking around at what was around. You know, what was being published, who was interesting. In Europe, I'd found heavy metal, so it was or Metal Hurlant. So it was those guys. It was Mobius. Is still a big favorite of mine. I still love his work, and those other people from that era, Bilal and that lot. And then in America, there was a new group of people working at Epic Illustrated, and so that would be Bill Sienkiewicz and Kent Williams and John Muth and George Pratt and that gang, you know, and that all looked really interesting. And so it's just gone on from there, really. And the people, so the comics artists now that are inspiring, there are so many. I think we're in a sort of golden age of comics at the moment. I've never been able to go into a comic book shop and come away with so many just completely beautiful, extraordinary, unique books. I think we're absolutely going through a golden age. So it's people like Cyril Pedrosa and who else?
Juanjo Guarnido.
Who?
Juanjo Guarnido, Black Sad.
I don't know that one. Sorry.
You know Black Sad?
Yeah. Is this the guy? This guy with a cat's head?
Yeah, the Juanjo Guarnido one. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh right. No, sorry. I haven't really got into that one. I was trying to think of a couple of names specifically. Well, I love Raul Fernandez's books. And of course, I love Lorenzo Mattotti's books. I just think he's the most extraordinary comics artist there's ever been. There you go. There's a bold statement. I think he's the best comics artist around, and he's genuinely an artist who has discovered uses comics as his medium. But he could do anything. He could do anything, and does do it. Obviously, he does many other things as well.
Yeah, I always say, you know, the three names I always mention in Italian comics that are above and beyond. I say, you know, three different generations, of course, as Sergio Topi.
Yeah, it's great. Great.
Mattori, and now from the new generation of Italians, GP.
Gippy's wonderful. I absolutely love his books. I mean, the lightness of touch with his storytelling is just beautiful. I love those books. Breccia I love historically. It's great. Caligaro is a not so well known but absolutely astounding illustrator. God, I completely blanked on the guy I was trying to think of who did the book Bandonial. Come on, brain.
I just got. I'm sorry. I know it's not him, but I was going to mention Michelucci to you, and bomb.
Yeah.
That's the only name I can think of now. Shit, I'm sorry.
No.
Okay, people in the audience, help us. That's your work.
I'll remember in a minute. I'm ashamed of myself.
Nah, it's fine. We'll just do the usual trick, which is change to another question, and then it'll come back in a second. And that's how it usually works.
Okay.
When you're drawing, stop. Don't Google it. That's a try. It's a try.
No, I won't. I'll leave the computer.
They won't tell us. They're quick. When you're drawing, I know you compose your own songs, but do you ever have any other music while you work in some, in the background, or you are like other artists who told me, if I'm in the layouts or thumbnails, I need absolute silence because I need to focus. But then when I go to other phases, like inking or coloring or painting, and in that way, then I can have it because it's a more mechanical thing. How do you think about that?
No, I listen to music all the time. I'm very happy. It's mostly music. It's not really songs. I listen to all kinds of music, and what I usually try and do is find some music that really conjures the mood of that particular story or whatever it is that I'm working on. And I tend to just play that music all the time when I'm working on that story because it sort of puts me back into that world. But no, I'm happy listening to music. And then I've been really interested in the sort of state of mind that I seem to need to get into to be able to work well. And it's what happens is every time I start a project, I usually spend a day drawing, and I get to the end of the day and it's all rubbish. I haven't done anything any good. And it all goes in the bin, and I just assume that I can't do it anymore. Don't seem to be able to draw anymore, and I'll have to go and get a proper job because I can't draw anymore. But the next day or the day after that, it's fine, and for some reason I get back into it and I seem to be able to do it. And so I've been trying to really pay attention to that state of mind. And it's finding some sort of, it's almost like a trance, really. It's some sort of middle ground between not thinking about it, but not overthinking about it. Paying attention, but not worrying and getting stressed and over worrying about it. Realizing that I've got a certain amount of time to do something, but not so short an amount of time that I feel up against it all the time, and not so long an amount of time that I can just put it off and think, I'll get to it tomorrow. It's got to be about right. I've got to find this sort of equilibrium, this sort of strange middle ground. So music seems to help with that. It seems to sort of put me in a trance and put me in a place that I can just it just sort of happens, and I can go into that world and draw. And then actually now, once I'm in it, once I've been doing the project for a few weeks, and I'm in it, and I know how it goes, and I'm comfortable, then I'm quite happy with anything playing in the background. I've been listening to documentaries, I've been listening to podcasts, I've been listening to lectures. I don't mind really. It just fills the air, and I seem to be able to listen to that and concentrate on that and just carry on drawing, and it's fine. Writing is a different thing. Writing, I absolutely just need no words, no radio, nobody talking at me, no songs. And the music needs to be as simple as possible. So I tend to just play like solo piano pieces or solo guitar. A few guitarists I really love, like Ralph Towner, people like that, just really simple. I'm a big fan of I should have remembered his name before I started that sentence. the film director who made Truly, Madly, Deeply, and The English Patient.
That's Anthony.
Anthony Minghella.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Well done.
We did it with both of us because I
Well
remember Anthony during Minghella. Yes.
Yeah. Between us, we got him. I'm a big fan of Anthony Minghella, and I remember. And if you ever want to learn about writing and filmmaking, listen to Anthony Minghella's director's commentaries on his DVDs. He's an amazing teacher and speaker. But I remember him saying that he writes to Bach because there's something about Bach's music that is incredibly orderly. It's mathematics. It's almost mathematics. And there's something about, and he's absolutely right. And I have a few albums of Bach music, mostly piano music. And it just makes your brain sort of click into it makes my brain anyway, click into an orderly mode. And I can order my thoughts, and I really can think clearly and find new ideas clearly and quickly. And so that was a great lesson. So I'm finding music like that, really.
Yeah, I same thing with Bach. In fact, that was, again, Paquette years ago, who also plays the piano. He told me about drawing with Bach because he listened to Minghella talking about that. I think it was on the DVD of The English Patient or something like that. So he told me about that. So when I needed to concentrate, when I write, which is not often, I have Bach all the time. And it was like, okay, you're right. It puts you in a mood.
It sort of orders my thinking.
Yeah.
You know, some music is very lively and chaotic. A lot of jazz that I love is very atonal and chaotic, and that can be great and inspiring, and it's great to paint to and whatever. But it's not good to write to. I need something that's has a clarity to it and allows me to think.
Yeah, I don't think you want Miles Davis or Django Reinhardt while you're trying to write.
No, or Cecil Taylor or Charlie Mingus, you know, forget it. I'm not going to write it.
It's not going to help.
But I love listening to it.
Did you mean Jorge González?
I did. Well done. Thank you.
Because
I'm so sorry.
No. In my head, I was understanding bandoneon, and I was like, bandoneon. What's bandoneon? Yeah. Until I translated to bandoneon, which is the
bandoneon.
So when I just said, when I was like,
in the Argentinian,
yeah. So
it's not helped because I was also trying to think of Pablo Oladel's name as well. He's another artist that I really like.
Pablo Oladel is so amazing.
I think it's Pablo something. Yeah, he's amazing as well. There are so many. That's the thing. There are so many really wonderful new voices coming through who are not. They don't have the baggage of nostalgia of looking back on what comics have been all the time. They respect the past, sure, but they're not dragged down by it, weighted down by it. They're looking forward and finding a new voice. I'm so inspired by all of those books.
It's so funny because I think about eras, and with Guerra yesterday we thought the same thing. You have the 60s when comics went crazy in a way. Then he was telling me about the 70s was an era where guys settled down and they didn't experiment as much. And I was like, wait, you are forgetting when Epic came with the Starling, Simonson, and all the others, and then Mobius and all the others going crazy in France. That generation, the 60s generation inspired the people in the 80s to create that kind of comic, but the people in the 70s inspired the people by the beginning of this century. And now new generation is inspired by you, by Sienkiewicz, and many others to create the things they saw when they were kids that you guys were creating, which is what I think helps them to be so open in terms of what they create, because they are not as how can I say it? We were talking before about the small boxes that education tries to put people in. When they saw before, they were seeing the 6-panel grid, the 9-panel grid, how comics were made, the Marvel style, blah blah blah, or the Tintin and that style, if you know what I mean. Nothing against them, but everything was really tight and precise. And what I was telling Gera yesterday, like, but then you have the other side when in the 70s they all went fucking nuts in the US with the new creations with Red Star, what happened in Epic Illustrated, and then what you saw in Heavy Metal, Metal Urland, Harakiri, and then and then all the others with Mobius, Bilal, and the others, this is what influences the new generation. And this is what I think taking us out to that point where Pablo, Jorge, and all that new generation, they see that as what they grew up with, as what they loved in comics. They didn't love those small frames. They love to see people just going and doing whatever they want to do. And that's why I agree we're in a golden age when new creators have no boundaries in what they want to do.
Yeah, I think that's true. The magazine that I saw that just completely changed my career ladder really was a Spanish magazine called Medios Revueltos, and there were 6 issues of it, and I think a couple of specials. And I saw that magazine when I was first started traveling. I'd done some professional books, so I was invited to festivals, and I started traveling. And I came to Barcelona actually, and I found Medios Revueltos and the people who were working there, Raul Fernandez and some of the other guys, and that was it. That's what I wanted to be doing. There was absolutely no difference between the very best, most profound and expressive art, drawing and painting, and these comics. There was no difference, and the subject matters that they were writing about and dealing with, there was no need to try and build bridges to comic book past. They were just saying, let's look at the great literature that's around. Let's look at great film writing. There's no reason why comics can't, as a medium, can't deal with those same subjects with the same, depth of ambition. Great, let's do that. And probably for others, it was seeing Raw magazine for the first time. That had a similar impact. But for me, Medios Revueltos was the moment. That's the one where my view of comics or what comics could be clicked into focus.
If you Spaniards watching this, if you don't know Medios Revueltos, you should feel ashamed of yourselves. Now, find it, because that's history.
Yeah, absolutely find it.
That's our history, and we should respect it and adore it. Just say it. Carolina Benzer, who's an amazing illustrator here in Spain, book cover illustrator mostly, she's asking me to ask you, in what techniques do you feel most comfortable working with? And on the contrary, is there any, if there's any, which ones do you hate when you, or you feel it? As the other day, Bill told me, when she asked one question, Bill literally told me, she's an illustrator, right? Bill Sienkiewicz. And I was like, why? It's like, it takes one to know one.
There's not really any really hate. I still really like just drawing. I'm drawing a lot just with pencil on paper. I know it's really, really boring answer, but I'm still really loving just exploring the different marks and weights and expressions you can get with graphite on paper. I've never been so comfortable drawing directly into a computer, although I have done that. I tend to think that computer illustration looks like plastic, and that can be okay. It can have a certain quality to it, but I like all the stuff that goes wrong, really, because that's the stuff that surprises me. I like it when the graphite, if I'm doing a pencil drawing, and the bits of the pencil graphite shreds a bit and spits on the paper and scuffs, and all that stuff comes through in the fine, and my fingerprints go on it, and all that stuff comes through in the final image, and it has a sort of humanness to it. It has a liveliness to it, and it surprises me. At the end of the day, those are the things that surprise me and excite me. Whereas everything that a computer does, it's really doing because you told it to do that, and it generally does not surprise me. It can surprise me in composition. So computers are great at complexity. So if you've got a bunch of images and you can combine them very quickly and layer them in different ways, and those combinations can surprise you. So that's the thing that I think computers are great for manipulating images and combining images, but actually creating those images in the first place, I still prefer to paint and draw them.
Yeah, I new artists, all come to me all the time because of my work, of course, and they more and more they are guys who work in tablets, computers, iPad Pros, whatever, and 99% of the time with new artists now, I'm finding that I have to repeat the same phrase after just watching the first panel, which is, that looks like you did it in a computer, and it shouldn't. And they're like, "What? But I did it in the computer." Yes. I'm not telling you to work in the computer. I'm telling you, it shouldn't look like it's made in a computer. Just look at the fucking tree by your window. Learn about the tree. I always say the same anecdote, but Paloma, my wife, you know her. She works on ECC now, marketing director. But before that, she was an architect. And she always tells me the same story about what she didn't appreciate when she was studying architecture was, but now is the part that she misses the most. And that what makes her go back to graphite and keep drawing, which is being in front of a church or in a public place, in a plaza, with a graphite pencil and just, penciling the buildings, penciling the people, penciling the plazas, penciling everything, that was real around her, and she's like, when I was young and we were in college, I hated it because you were there, like in the sun and they made you do it and you have to, draw every single part of the church and all that. But now she says, this is the part that I miss the most because it was real. If you know what I mean?
Yep. I mean, computer graphics have a quality to them, and certainly there's a lot. It makes life easy. I just miss the noise. I miss the stuff that surprises me. I always used to like working with sort of analog machines, like color photocopies and typewriters and printmaking devices and things like that, because they all try and interpret what you want them to do, and you can screw around with them and kick them and force them to trying to do things, and they try and interpret what you want, and there's a bit of a dialogue going on with those machines, those older machines. Whereas computers just put up an error message saying, "I'm sorry, I can't do that."
Yeah, blue screen.
They're no fun at all.
You cannot fight.
They don't play with.
You cannot fight the blue screen, but you can take the Xerox machine like. Ah!
Yeah.
So let me see. Felipe Abreu says, my daughter loves Mirror Mask and she was too embarrassed to say it when we met Dave at Lakeland Comic Con, where he performed his Black Dog show, Paul Nash, another fantastic artist. La Mergenas, can they talk about his creator-owned cages, how it came to me, and what does he think about it 25 years later? Okay, so I'm going to just ask the last part of the question, which is, what do you think about cages now?
Well, I mean, cages is my first baby, really. I still, like you do, feel for your children. I'm still really love it, and there's almost nothing in it that I would change. It's exactly how I was feeling at the time. I felt very proud of it then, and I'm still very happy with it. A lot of the things in it, I still really value. I wanted to do a book that was about real people and how real people talk and move and start a sentence and then get lost and head off somewhere else, and all those little human qualities. That those are the things that I love about real life, real engagement with real people, and also that I love in a really good film or really good artwork. Mm-hmm. That humanness. So I'm glad that that's there, because I think it is there. At the time, I was really shaken by the Salman Rushdie affair, and I'm glad I got to say something about that, even though it's very oblique and not obvious. It's there, and those issues are still with us. They're not going anywhere. And at the time, I was still sort of forming my own ideas about how I felt about belief. A sort of a faith-based view of the world as opposed to a rational view of the world. And so the book is a little bit trying to work out how I felt about that stuff, and the kinds of stories I wanted to tell. I wanted to tell imaginative stories, but I wanted to stay what I felt was the right side of the line, and the line being of rationality. I'm happy to have stories that have imaginative images in, dream images, all of these things that are, the products of our extraordinary brains. But I'm not interested in telling stories about monsters and ghosts and supernatural things, because I don't believe in them.
Yeah, that's
so Cages for me was a kind of me planting my flag of what I thought was valuable and what I felt was my view of the world. And as such, it's still very accurate.
So that makes me ask you, because you just said you prefer real, to monster, blah blah blah. Then did that make it a struggle to do the Sandman covers? Because that's Neil's fantasy world, monster world, blah blah blah, and you're telling me you like to stay with the human part, with the emotional human part instead of the fantasy land. So did it make you a struggle, or you found a way to just make it fit into your way of seeing things?
Well, no, you're right. I mean, that's very much Neil's world and very much Neil's way of relating to the world and the kinds of stories he wants to tell. And it's probably why I never did the interiors of the book or spent any great length of time doing Sandman. So to spend a day a month doing a Sandman cover was actually, it was a pleasure. It's like playing in somebody else's sandpit for a day. But it was not a great investment of my own time in that. I'd much rather spend a lot of time on my own projects and my own world. And that's been true ever since, really. I mean, the books that I've spent time with, the projects that I've invested a lot of my own time in, have been ones that I felt have been part of my world. I've stayed the right side of the line. Mm-hmm. I'd say the hardest one for me was Mirror Mask. I'm delighted that your reader there and his daughter liked it. I'm really glad when people like it. But it was a balancing act, that one, because I just was not happy with the script in the end, and it was one of those situations where you find yourself on a roller coaster, and it's off. The film is off and running, and I can't pull the handbrake on now and stop and say, right, we just have to rethink this. I felt I just had to try and make the best of it, and so we put a lot of love and a lot of skill from a lot of animators and a lot of I think pretty pictures and things in that film. And I love the actress at the center of it. Stephanie was amazing, and I did try to make it a dream. Obviously, this is a dream rather than pretending that it's a real place. But nonetheless, it was a bit of a balancing act for me, that one. And I got to the end of it and promised myself never to get into that situation again.
Where did your stories come from? And I mean, it comes from your gut. It comes from your guts, from your heart, from your brain.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Don't worry. I was saying, when a new project, new idea comes from, again, let's forget the boundaries. Doesn't matter if it's movies, music, comics, player, blah, blah, blah. Does it come from your guts, from what you're feeling, an emotion you're feeling right then, from your heart, from your brain, or there's no difference? Everything is connected and it just comes out?
It usually just comes from something that really gets to me, really affects me. I made a film.
Sorry. I just mentioned it because you just said, Cages was a reaction in a way to the Salman Rushdie stuff. So that made me think if any other of your projects, I could say, oops.
Sorry, my phone's ringing. I'm sure my wife will pick it
Okay, let's continue. So that's what I was asking about that bit. If all of what you do comes out from that, from a reaction, from maybe anger, maybe frustration, maybe your gut starts telling you, I need to talk about that.
Yes, it's usually all of those things, but it's mostly thinking that's really unusual. I haven't seen anybody deal with that subject or say that statement or that idea in that way before, and I'd really love to do that. I'd really love to spend some time exploring that. So I made a film called Luna, which was inspired by a very sad event. A friend of mine, friend of mine, the man in the couple I was at art school with, they lost their baby. Their baby died. And now that happens to a lot of people, but this was really, really close to me. It's a really good friend. And my daughter was born, within days. So our experiences were in parallel, and then he lost his child and my daughter was born. So there was a really strong link there. And then I tried, first of all, I called him to see how things were going when my daughter was born. And as soon as he picked up the phone, I knew something awful had happened. So then over the next few weeks, I tried to reach out. And over the next several months, I tried to reach out. And he was absolutely furiously angry with the world. And this came across in every conversation we tried to have. Eventually, I would say 2 years later, we actually sat down with each other and were able to talk about it. And the way that he views the world was quite different to me. I'm very much a rationalist sort of chap, whereas he has a much more sort of, I wouldn't say he's not a sort of member of a mainstream religion, but he's much more of a sort of believes in the supernatural a bit more, and he's much, so that's the way he sees the world. That's the way he interprets events in the world. And the way that he spoke about the previous 2 years that he'd lived through and the experience of it, I just thought was fascinating and extraordinary, and opened up a world of a way of looking at grief, the way we grieve, the way we work through that grief, that I just had not heard before. I hadn't heard anybody talk that way about it in that particular way and make me see it so clearly. And so I just wanted to do something with that. So it sat around in my sketchbooks for a long time, and I didn't want to just tell his story. That didn't seem fair. It's his story, or their story. That seemed like an intrusion. And so I wrote it. I wrote it as a story at one point and felt, no, that's too close to them. So I left it. And so, decades went by, and then it's still haunting me, this idea, and it's still living in my head, and I still really need to do something with it. So I wrote the story that was the script for Luna, which used all of the truth, the truthful elements that he talked about, but in a completely different context, completely different couple, completely different place, completely different events. But I was able to deal with what I felt was the truth at the center of it, the things that he talked to me about. So those are the things, really. Something like that just nags at me. That lived in my sketchbooks and my head for a long, long time before it actually became a project.
Do you think
most of the things that I'm doing are like that? Sorry.
No, don't worry. I was just going to ask, do you think that in a way it was because he lost his child right before you had your daughter? And, I could feel, at least myself, seeing that happen to somebody that close, and your daughter was just born. I could be every day, like scared as shit about losing my own child, my own daughter. So maybe that's why it haunted you for such a long time, that it was so close to home in a way, because you just had your daughter yourself.
Yes, it was all of those things. It was the sort of this sort of thin membrane between his world and my world, his experience and mine. There was nothing in it. There was no cause. It was a cot death, which is still a rather mysterious event. still really knows what causes those things. So it was. I could have easily walked that path. He could have easily walked my path. It was a thin membrane, and this idea of a sort of a membrane between our world and this other world of alternate realities, alternate possibilities, just became a way of looking at grief and dealing with grief and all of those things. So the idea in the film was that the child who had died is lived out in a series of dreams at different ages over a weekend. These two couples get together over a long weekend, Friday night to Monday morning, and over that period, there's a series of dreams or daydreams or in strange imaginative occurrences where the child is lived out at different ages. And the idea was that it's the sort of the beginning of the turning point where grief turns, where they're able to put the life of the child in to reach some conclusion with that, and in fact the last fantasy is the last dream is of an old man who dies, and then and so it's like the life of the child is over, and they're able to put it to rest and stop dwelling on the past and looking back all the time and start to look forward. So they're never going to get over it completely. It's always going to live with them, but they will start to move on with their lives. So that was the idea.
Okay. Carolina, no. I have a 6-year-old, so believe me, I know of every possible scare you can have. Of losing your, well, you know much better than me, but I remember watching. It's going to sound stupid, but I remember watching Interstellar. When our daughter was 3 months old, I think, 4 months old, and that moment when he has to leave his daughter for the spaceship, whatever, and has to leave his daughter behind, I couldn't stop crying because it was a situation,
these things,
and it was a completely different context. But it was, I have a 4-year-old, and I'm seeing dad having to separate from his daughter, maybe forever.
Mm-hmm.
Just small things that
So the thing that I'm really interested in at the moment is the act of changing your mind.
Mm-hmm.
What it takes to change somebody's mind, or for you to change your own mind about something that you feel really defines you, something that you feel is really, really true and important and profound and obviously true, and yet it's not true, and somehow you have to reach some resolution with that, with yourself, and unpick your own sense of yourself to allow the fact that you're wrong about this, and you simply have to change your mind. I just think that's a really interesting process, especially at the moment when so many people are embedded and entrenched in their particular views of the world, and I just cannot see the world through another point of view. So I'm trying to write something that expresses that idea of what it takes to change your mind.
I absolutely love it. It's just the dichotomy of what you always have believed or have been taught, but at the same time, it's fucking wrong, but you cannot get yourself to change it because you've always been, made to think that way. I absolutely love that idea.
And not even being made to think it that way by outside environment, by friends, by people that you're in your particular bubble with, but actually the way the mind works. I've sort of unpicked this from a thing that happened to me. I actually had a medical thing, and during dealing with it, I'm not going to go into it, but during my dealing with it, I was told something by the doctor, and at the time, I didn't really
absorb it.
I didn't really absorb it or think too much about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to think, actually, that's a problem. That I really need to deal with that. And I let about a year and a half go by, and then I dealt with it. And in dealing with it, what happened was I had to realize that I could not have heard him say that. I was absolutely sure that he said a certain thing. And yet, because I've now gone through the medical procedure to find out what was going on there, I have to realize that it's not true. I must have misheard it, or he misspoke, or something happened, and I've just embedded that particular fact in my head, and I just assume that that's true. And yet now I know for a fact that it can't have been true. And so I have to unpick it. I have to just say that is that little piece of factual brickwork that created my world. I just have to take it out. It's just not true. I was wrong. I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've just had a little taste of what that must feel like. And so I'm trying to just sort of extrapolate from that what it must take to unpick somebody's worldview. If you are absolutely convinced this is the truth, this is the way the world works, and yet events happen that keep on disproving that keep on nagging at you, that it can't be the case. It just can't be the case. What does it take to change your mind?
It's amazing. That's also like the he said, she said part, when you're convinced in a conversation that you said that, but she didn't, or I didn't. You know, when you have a conversation, when you realize the next day with your wife or a close relative, you realize after a couple of days of having thought you heard something, and it's not true. And then somebody who was also in the room tells you, no, she didn't say that, or she tells the other one, but you were absolutely, fully, 100% convinced. That's exactly what, and you can argue for hours saying, you absolutely said that. And until somebody else tells you, no, that wasn't the words. This is what you heard, but she never, or you never, if the other person says it, that's not what that person said at all. This is what your brain thinks he or she said.
It's what your brain has embedded in as being the truth. But your brain is constantly a series of misinterpretations and misrepresentations and information coming in that you mishear or that rubs up against something else and you misinterpret it. It's a strange, soupy, blurry world that's going on up here. And I think to know that is actually empowering. It makes you realize that, of course, there are other ways of interpreting information. There are other ways of viewing things, and you just have to be available to that. And what I was going to say was, your conversation that you were just having with your partner or whatever, and you were sure that they'd said a certain thing, and she was sure she'd said another thing. It's very rare that a third party comes in and they videotape the conversation and can play it back to you, and you can decisively say, bloody hell, she didn't say that, I am wrong.
Absolutely.
You very, very rarely you get absolute proof that you were wrong.
Yeah. Do you think that?
Whereas I think.
No, please go.
No, I was just about to say, in my little experience with my medical thing, I did feel, even though there wasn't a videotape playing back of what the doctor told me, because of the way it panned out, I just had to say that is absolute proof that this version of reality that I've created in my own mind is wrong.
Yeah. Do you think that's because, it's going to sound strange maybe, but do you think that's because of the way our animalistic brain works in terms of pattern recognition? I mean, we're also used to patterns, which, yes, used to save our lives when it's danger. You see some leaves ruffle. That means there's, an animal that's going to kill us. Let's protect ourselves from leaf. But in this modern time and age, I think pattern recognition in many cases causes what you said. You know, when you are going to understand something that hasn't been said, or something that's not really going to happen, but your brain is wired to think, okay, this is what that person is going to do, or that was what a person is going to say, or in 5 seconds this is going to happen, when it's never really going to happen. But we are wired to think that's what's going to happen every time.
I think it's a vital part of our ability to survive, and it's one of the reasons why we've been so successful as a species, and why any animal on the evolutionary scale has managed to survive. They all have their own internal pattern recognition systems. So it's really, really important, but it's not foolproof. And the great thing about having a brain the size that we have is that we are now self-aware enough to be able to say it's not foolproof, and it is occasionally a trap, and it is occasionally a box that we find ourselves trapped within and can't escape or see the world in a different way. And so I think it's really interesting to break out of that.
Yeah.
And analyze that.
Yeah, it's funny, except the ones who think they see Jesus Christ's face in sandwiches. You know what I mean?
Well, yes. I always remember there's a great comedy sketch. I can't remember who did it now, but somebody. It started with news reporters arriving at a house, and they cut open a melon, and inside the little pits were arranged to spell "There is no God."
Anyway, Carolina,
it's a really nice idea.
No, I love it. Carolina asked, I asked the same thing to Bill Sienkiewicz. I'm interested on your take or your experience about it. Have you ever suffered the imposter syndrome? And if you do, how do you deal with it?
The what syndrome?
The imposter syndrome.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that. The imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have to tell me what the imposter syndrome is.
Imposter syndrome is that you don't belong, you are not good at what you do, you're like somebody else.
Oh, that one.
So someone that's better than you should be doing blah, 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 blah. That one.
Yeah, I think everybody feels that, especially at the when they're starting out.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people say a similar thing, where they simultaneously feel, why would anybody give me work? There's so many great illustrators out there, or so many great people in the field that they are in out there. Why give me the work? I mean, it's crazy. I'm never going to get started. And simultaneously think, well, I can do better than that stuff. I mean, just give me a chance. That's rubbish. I can do better than that. So there's a sort of huge arrogance of youth, but also this sort of terrible, feeling of being, useless and a beginner, and why would anybody take a chance? So I think that's the balancing act, really. You balance those things as you progress, and they tend to just, both of those go out of focus. I think the more you become confident with who you are and what you do, those two imposters fall away, and you become just yourself.
Yeah, in a way, I remember Bill answer her saying, look, I just keep working. When I feel it, and says, like, I feel it a lot, I feel it, I still feel it sometimes, like I just keep working and it goes away.
I guess so, yes. I mean, I don't really feel that now. I haven't felt anything like that for a long time. But then I just keep my head down. I'm probably like Bill, really. I don't. What I do isn't. I've got friends who are more involved in a field where approbation from an audience is more important. They're actors, or they're comedians, or they're in that sort of world where they really need that feedback with an audience or with other people to have a sense of what they're doing. I mean, it kind of defines what they're doing.
Yeah.
Whereas I really don't. I'm just as happy making drawings just for myself here, or a book that I might self-publish or not publish at all. The pleasure is in just doing it, or doing a book that I know is going to be printed in its millions or go around, you know, in 30 different languages. They're absolutely no different to me, and I just get the pleasure from making the drawings.
Yeah, I don't know if this is real quote or not, you know, by Picasso, but I always remember when people ask me about artist block or imposter syndrome, I don't know if Picasso really said this or not, but when he was asked, he answered, "I hope inspiration finds me working. I am not going to wait for it. I'm not going to wait for, you know, for the block to disappear. I'm just going to keep going, and, you know, it'll happen."
Yes. Yeah, I mean, Chuck Close's quote was always, "Amateurs wait for inspiration. The rest of us just get on with work. You know,
Yeah.
sharp in the morning for work."
Yeah.
I just think of it like that, really. And writer's block or creative block, or I tend to just deal with by just doing something else. It's that simple. You know, if I'm doing something, usually creative block is simply because I've been doing something for a while and I've got a bit stale, and I'm just getting lazy and I'm just not concentrating on it. So I just go off and do something else for a bit.
That's what I was going to ask. You know, when the block comes, is because you're, you know, like really, really tired of having been writing for hours and hours in a way. You just jump, I guess, to using another brain muscle. Let's go back to science and analysis here. You just say, okay, I need to do something else to just unblock. If I'm going to, let's play, you know, some music or draw now, and the block disappears, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And playing music is great because it really is a completely different way of thinking, and it's physical, and it's just a completely different way of using the brain. So that's always been a really nice balance in my life. For a lot, when I started, I got very busy making illustrations and design and stuff, and I didn't play much music, and I was wondering why I was getting a bit miserable. And it was really just that I just needed a bit more balance. So as soon as I started making music for films and playing in local bands and things like that, even just going down the pub and playing at an open mic or something like that, I felt much happier.
Yeah, and even in the studio, I guess, at home, you know, like what I'm asking is, you just get the guitar or something, like, fuck it, I'm done with writing for today, and just, you know, get your guts out with the music, to the emotions out in a way, to disconnect from the having to have the brain wire in order. I need to follow a structure because I'm doing this and that. Music, at least for me too, music is I disconnect my reason. I try to find chaos in a way that lets me get out of order. Does it make sense at all?
Yeah.
With the music is I need to follow my brain. I just need to follow my emotion in that moment.
Yes, I think so. And especially improvised music. I love jazz music, and it's you know, it's an art form in the moment, in the present tense, and so that feeling of just riding. I don't know where this is coming from. I don't know where it's going to go, and that wonderful improvised conversation that you either have as you're playing alone, or especially when you're playing with somebody else, and that conversation is flowing. I mean, there's nothing like it, and that's all the holiday I need. I don't need to go away for a week. I just need to play with other musicians for an hour or two, and then my batteries are charged and I'm ready to work again.
Yeah. Nakoma Mix, good name. I've always loved how you combine photography and your paintings and drawing. I would like to know your process. And let me change the question to, is there a process?
Is there a process? Yeah, I suppose so. Each piece tends to dictate the best way to express the emotions or the atmosphere in that piece. There's something about it that maybe, you know, if I'm drawing a person, if the image that I've got to do an image of a person, but the person is very, very fragile and weak and losing consciousness or something, well, maybe that's just a little pencil line. Maybe it's really delicate, just a few lines, one bit of wash of paint. That, you know, that's all it needs, and the fragility of the line just comes across in by using one little pen line. Maybe that's what does it. So there's something about the emotion that you're trying to express in there that suggests the medium that you use. If the image is of somebody who's made of stone, granite, they're a dictator, they're set in stone, well, maybe the texture of the stone's the thing. That should be a photograph, because the photographic texture of stone why paint it when you can photograph it and get that real granite and the light, get the lighting right. So then I'll photograph it and use the texture of the stone within the piece. So all the time, it's not because I really fancy doing a photograph today, or I really, you know, want to play around in Photoshop. It really is trying to express the idea in the piece and find the right medium to do that.
Mm-hmm. Oh wait, see, would mention somebody saying here, Dino Battaglia was another great example of between Italian comic artists.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, like him.
Where do you want to go from now? I mean, as an artist, what's your next step in terms of? There is an evolution to Dave McKEAN, or it's just something that flows like a river. I am romantic today.
Well, I think at the moment, I really want to concentrate on my own work, my own bits. For a long time, I felt that I could split my time, say 50-50, between commissioned work and working with other people and my own work. And I think just getting older, you feel time ticking, and you feel, you know, life's passing. And while I've got the energy and the ideas and the drive and the will to do it, I want to make sure that that flag that I planted with Cages is continued, and I get to make the stories that are really important to me, that mean a lot to me. So there are a number of stories now. I'm working on one at the moment called Raptor. I've got this book about truth and changing your mind. I really want to do that book. I've got a kind of end of the world book that I want to do. I've got I want to go back to a book that I did with Neil called Signal to Noise, because I never was happy with that book. There's a central idea in it that I really, really love, and I still think it's a great subject, but I don't think we got it right, and I'd love to revisit it and remake it in some form, either as a film or as another book. So there's a whole bunch of things, and I'm trying to do a book a year, but I don't think I'll manage that. But I'm trying to do a book a year. And then I've not done an art book, like a big roundup career book. And I kind of like to do that now, because I feel like I've reached the end of a whole bunch of work, and I feel like I could draw a line under that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like personally in my where I am, I feel like I'm now in a new phase. My kids have left home, and it's funny, this lockdown, these 12 weeks, you know that phrase, "Stop the world, I want to get off."
Mm-hmm. Que se
pare el mundo,
para el mundo que se baje. We have the same saying in Spanish.
I think what that says is you feel that you're in some sort of race, the human race, the rat race, and everything is racing, and you daren't stop because everybody will just pass you, and you feel like you're running and running just to stand still. You know that feeling. Whereas these 12 weeks have been, the world has stopped. I've been able to take a breath. I've been able to sort of go out every morning and go for my walk and think about drawing a line under all of that stuff that I've done and starting this new phase, this new work. I've got my studio in order. It's never been in a better state. We've tidied everything in the studio.
Now it looks amazing.
And it looks absolutely pristine, tidy. I know where everything is. And I've just sort of been able to think and focus on what I want to do from now on. So actually, you know, on the second day of this lockdown, with Claire, we just decided, we're determined to however long this takes, whether it's 8 weeks or 12 weeks or 16 weeks, we're determined to come out of this in a stronger place than going into it. And the world, God knows what's going to happen to the world and what's going to happen out there, but we are personally going to come out of this in a stronger place.
Yeah.
So we're absolutely determined to do that, and we've managed to do that, I think.
Is it, in your case, have you overworked? Because many artists are telling me that since they've been on lockdown, their brain cannot stop functioning. So they are working a lot more, or not working, sorry, delivering a lot more work than before the lockdown because of that, just because they are focusing a lot more than before because there's no distractions. So they just sit down and suddenly by the end of the day, it's like, oh, I've produced a lot more than I used to. And I haven't even thought about it. I am not thinking about producing more. I am just doing it. And I don't know why.
Actually, honestly, not really. I think I've always had a pretty good work ethic, and that hasn't changed. I can only work for so long in the day before I just get tired and the stuff just doesn't look so good. So I know when to stop. All that's happened is we've had quite an ascetic, structured life with, as you say, very little distraction, very little. I don't like social media really, so I don't spend really much time on that at all. And we just had a really focused, monastic almost schedule, and it's been wonderful. I feel fitter and healthier, and I'm glad to be on top of my life. It's been a good thing. Now, I know it's a terrible thing. I know people have had awful experiences through this, indeed have died and have lost loved ones through this experience. But I think clearly lessons have to be learned as a species, as well as personally. And so we have to find the positive in this. That was our effort to try and find the positive in this.
Yeah, this, but at the beginning of this, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, we are going to come out as a better species after this," and I kept saying, "I don't think so. I think that the good people is going to become better, and the bad people is going to become worse because they are going to get more extreme." But I'm also look at the positive part, and I think in our case, Paloma, myself, Erin, we are going to get out stronger. We have the chance to spend a lot more time than we could have with our child because there's no school, and to spend more time to learn a lot more from her, this time in her life than we expected in a way. I know it's a weird way to say it, but I enjoyed a lot more time with my child than I knew I could because he would be in a school in the last 3 months.
I've got several friends who have young children and who are now homeschooling, and now say all teachers should be paid £250,000 a year. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
This is amazing that they managed to do this.
Yeah, I already thought that before. Now I think that
yes.
quarter million, fuck it, they save $1 million for teaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. But
absolutely, it's worth it.
At the same time, I think the time that we got with the kid is invaluable. Seeing how her brain works, seeing how she's evolving, even during these 3 months, she became 6-year-old during the lockdown. Seeing how she's growing mentally and physically in this time, while we're teaching her at home, mostly Paloma, I gotta say, teaching her at home, and seeing how she's evolving, with math, with language, with reading, is so fascinating that I'm really loving it. So by the end of it, trying to see it positively is that thing with the kid, and how as a family we've evolved. I think it's making us stronger. So I think we're going to come out of this, having a better view of the world, or a more rational view.
I hope so. I mean, I feel obviously very pessimistic about the ecological side of our future here as a species. So I think it's going to take a lot to change human nature. But you tend to see the big through the small.
Yep.
As individuals, we tend to live a rather reckless lives, and we eat what we shouldn't eat, and we smoke and we drink and we do all these crazy things. And then we have a little heart flutter or something, and maybe this is the heart flutter for the human race, and we will start to see why our impact on the way we live with the natural world has to change.
Absolutely.
Our dependency on fossil fuels has to change.
Absolutely.
Honestly, I think it's too late, and I don't think human nature will change. But you've got to have hope. You've got to hope.
Just stop it. We'll change. The new generation will change. You know what? A new generation, like my daughter, they will remember the pandemic, and they will remember our relations with the world, and how us old farts fucked it up. They will remember it, and then, believe me, we are taking good care of talking to our daughter and saying, talking about fuel and electric cars and ecology, etc., etc. That's a big part of our home teaching, aside of what comes from school. So I think that new generation has a chance to, having grown up in a pandemic with 6, 5, 6, 7-year-olds, seeing how we did, say, okay, when we grow up, we don't want to be that way.
Absolutely. I mean, that is obviously the most hopeful thing. It's the hope of the younger generation finding their moment. I mean, we all have a historical moment that we have to respond to.
Yeah.
And this is it. And of course, we all do. Doesn't matter what age we are. But let's hope that those changes can be driven home by the young. And by the young of their parents, nagging their parents. Let's hope it works that way. Yes,
absolutely. I hope that teenagers now who've been in lockdown, and I know some teenagers, nieces and nephews and nieces of mine, who have been nagging my brothers, their parents, now as teenagers, telling them, stop driving that car, or why don't you go to work in the car when you can just use public transportation, or use the bicycle. My older brother takes the car to go play paddle tennis, and I know my niece has been telling him that. So you go play sports to a place that is like less than a mile away in the freaking car. When you go to play sports, why don't you just get on the bicycle and go there? That sounds like you're hitting, I don't know how you call it, before you play, you have to hit your body to start playing, whatever it's called.
Yes.
So you use the bicycle to do that. And my brother was calling me the other day saying, I cannot say no, because what she says is exactly right. I waste 10 minutes in the paddle court, to heat up and prepare to play, when I can just do that in the bicycle, and I'm not spending any money on fuel. And it's good for the ecology. And you know what? She's right. I've been doing it because I never thought. And it's less than a mile away. I can just even walk.
Yeah.
So that's what I hope, that teenagers, as you said, are nagging their parents now after 3 months being at home, saying, Dad, Mom, I've been stuck at home for 3 freaking months. You got to change. And I'm a teenager, so I'm not going to stop messing with you until you do.
Yeah, well, I think all of these little nudges of behaviour add up, and there will have to be huge revolutionary nudges as well, and political nudges. Those are going to be the hardest, but everything counts.
Yeah, it's happening a lot. I don't know in England, but today they gave the numbers of from May 2019 to May 2020, purchases of bicycles in Spain, percentage is going out 1,600% in terms of purchase of bicycles in Spain. Again, 1,600%. So it's like people just said, screw it. Many people who just was used, of course, in a way it's because they're scared. Yes, they're scared of public transportation. They're scared of going in a car, whatever. I don't care. If they are scared and that forces them to go on a bicycle or walk, I'm fine with it. That's a good thing what you just said before. It's a pandemic, it's really bad, but if this pandemic causes people to just use a bicycle because they're scared of public transportation or the car, I'm fine with it.
Yep.
Anyway, last question, and I will let you go. Sorry, I just ranted there.
Okay.
Carolina asks, have you considered going back to work on illustrating books for children? I really love what you did in the day I swapped my dad for 2 goldfish, and that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm happy doing books for children. I haven't done any recently. I mean, I started doing them because I had children, and I no longer have children. I have adults. So the sort of nice vicarious pleasure of getting a new script for a children's book and reading it to my kids and seeing how they responded to it and seeing how that might shape my attitude to the illustrations, which bits they found scary and which bits they found delightful and which bits they found funny. I don't really have that anymore because I don't have kids. But, if a good one comes along, I'm happy to do it. I'm still doing the odd book with English author called David Almond, who I think is amazing. And we've done 4 books together now, and I think he's got another one in the works for me, so that would be lovely. And then I've done a lot of work with an amazing chef called Heston Blumenthal.
Yeah.
A 3 Michelin star chef.
We call him here the British Ferran Adrià.
Well, he is indeed, absolutely. Well, he's hugely inspired by Ferran Adrià.
Of course,
obviously,
like everybody else.
Like everybody else, yes. Did you go to El Bulli?
Yes.
Did you go to El Bulli?
Yeah.
What did you think?
I remember it was. Well, I don't know if there's an explanation. I just went there and I thought my mind disappeared for like 3-4 hours because it
was another world.
Afterwards, Can Roca is like the best restaurant in the world. It's incredible. I've been to I've been to all of the restaurants that Albert has made afterwards. Even the one that his chef of cuisine, 2 chopsticks, Dos Palillos, 2 chopsticks, which is just a really small place that he went to Japan, his chef of cuisine, and fell in love with a Japanese woman, and he came back and created a mix of Spanish tapas and Japanese food based on Ferran Adrià's concept. Which the place is amazing, and it's a really small place with a Japanese bar where you can see where they can do anything, and you can sit in the bar, and only like 8-9 people can fit there at any given time. So it's an amazing experience. But
is that
yes?
Is that in Barcelona?
Yeah, it's in Barcelona. The MACBA, the museum, right? It's just in front of the MACBA museum. Between the MACBA museum and the I forgot the name of the. It's a really famous house. It's like 100 meters away. Next time you come, and I hope you come soon, believe me, I will take you there. It's an amazing experience. And it's just when you walk by, the funniest thing is that when you walk by, you don't know it's there because from the outside, it looks like just a regular, Gothic quarter bar. But there's like a blinders that covers the back, and when you go past those blinders, that's where the real restaurant is.
All right. Okay.
It's amazing. But what I was trying to say is that when you've been at El Bulli, everything else, like okay, they're trying the same concept or playing around with it, which is like his brother's restaurant, Tickets and all the others are playing around, and he does amazing things because he was, in a way, the mad scientist that make
Yes.
Ferran's ideas become real. Albert was the mad scientist.
Yeah.
But the first time in El Booty, well, first time and only, I only went once, was like, as I think you've perfectly defined it, like entering another world. Because I have never seen or heard or smelled anything like that. It was just a friend who's friends with the guys there who got me, a table after trying for, I think, 3 years. I'm not kidding. And suddenly I got
I'm not surprised.
I got a phone call saying you got a table at El Bougie tomorrow. And I was like, what?
Right.
You got a table tomorrow after 3 years. And I'm like, it's not even in Barcelona. I have to go, and you cannot even sleep.
It's roses. Yeah, I know. It's a drive.
It's a middle of nowhere. So it's like, it's either now or never, or maybe in 3 years. So I went.
Yeah.
I almost died in, as a sensory experience, like never being in anything else at all. That is looking. And I'm not even talking about the food. The food was. But I'm not even talking about that. I mean about the complete experience they created.
Yeah.
Sensory, olfactory, like nose, hands, everything was thought as a, I have to say, as a mad scientist experience.
Yes.
So it was so incredible.
Yeah.
And the funniest part of it was 2 months after that, Ferran announced he was closing the restaurant and making it into the school.
Ah, right.
So if I had said no, it's too close, let's do
that would have been
time, I could have never been able to go.
Yeah.
Did you go?
Yeah, I went once. Also, it was a couple of years before he stopped the place. He closed it. And yes, it was extraordinary. And of course, I'm coming from England. I had to take a 2-day vacation just for lunch. It was ridiculous, really. But I had to do it. You've got to do it. And to be honest, the only reason I brought it up was Heston up is because he's thinking of doing children's books. Remember, we were talking about children's books. So there's a possibility of doing some children's books with Heston.
Okay.
Exploring science in the kitchen, which would be fun.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. Anyway, you guys, it's been 2 hours. This guy has a life, and I don't, but he has a life. So I don't want Claire to come from downstairs or upstairs with a hammer and say, "You macho are gonna pay for this." So I think we should get this over with. First of all, thank you so much, Dave, for being here.
Thank you. It's been great fun. It's been a very nice, breezy conversation. We've covered some good stuff, I think. Yeah.
And to all of you, please don't cut today because I want to say proper goodbye after I cut the live feed. And to all of you, maybe Paloma wants to say hello. So to all of you, thank you so much for being here. Muchas gracias. And Monday at 1 p.m., Brian Bendis. I'm sorry, I was forgetting. He's going to be with us. Thank you. Have a good I was going to say evening. Yes, have a good evening and a good weekend. Buen fin de semana to all of you. Bye-bye in 3.